Hello and welcome back to my LEGO Castle Kingdom. I've been working on several new additions to my layout, including fleshing out the inner city area with several more shops and businesses, as well as adding some tweaks and smaller additions to the other parts of the layout. So there's lots to explore, and let's get started with an overview of all of the new buildings which I've added since last time. So we won't spend too long looking at this side, because I think the other side behind those buildings is actually a whole lot more interesting. But just so you can see the types of structures which I've added, there's this very fancy looking 3-story structure built on top of the raised base plate there, and that is actually home to a glassblower business making stained glass windows on the lower floor, as well as a tailor on the second floor. With those other buildings out of the way, we get a much better unobstructed view of the overall shape of this building, which you can see uses a very unusual colour scheme. We have these violet doors contrasted with the orange designs of the timber beams and the medium nougat walls behind it, as well as a very nice looking canopy which provides shelter for a cobbler making and selling shoes. So that is the first new building, and there's still lots more to see on the other side and the interior. But before we head there, let's take a look at these two buildings, which include this very striking red and black coloured building. And this one was especially fun to build because of this unusual 45-degree angle that part of the structure sits at. And that also creates a really unusual flowing roofline, which helps reinforce the idea that this area in particular is a very densely populated area of the city, with the space being limited and the buildings having to be built as close together as possible. And you can see I've already planned out some space for another couple of smaller houses, or maybe some more shops over to the right there. This will basically end up creating a small little cul-de-sac area where all of these buildings will converge into a single point. So I think that would be a really neat little area, and a very cozy and fairly realistic part as well. Of course, building the buildings at an angle like this does end up creating some awkward spaces, such as this small area at the bottom, and that's why I've decided to fill this up with a small fortune teller's tent. So there's the fortune teller right there, and no good fortune teller would be complete without a glowing crystal ball, so I thought I'd include one with the help of a simple blue flickering LED, and that looks so cool in the dark especially. And then as for other details, I've also included a small table with a cloth and some tarot cards on the back, and then some clutter and general boxes and crates over in the back here, just to fill up the rest of this area. Because as you can see, this would be a very tightly packed space if you were a minifigure, but there's still space for this nice little balcony on top of this olive green building, and that actually provides a view out to the ocean, or where will eventually be the ocean, as well as to this little courtyard area around here. And the reason I haven't decorated this side is because I'll eventually fill that up with another building, and you won't see that side of this olive green building. So what exactly are these two buildings? Well, this green one here, that is the site of the Harbour Master. So that includes a massive warehouse down the bottom, which we'll take a look inside in a little bit. And then this red and black building is home to a doctor's office on the second floor. And then the first floor is home to a sculptor. So before we check those out, there's just one more small addition which I want to show you in the corner of the marketplace, and that is this Fletcher with his stand of bows for sale. I was originally going to dedicate an entire shop to this guy, but then I thought that he didn't really need that much space compared to some of the other businesses which I'm planning on including, so I thought this small outdoor stand would be sufficient, and that even includes a small barrel full of feathers for the Fletcher to fashion into arrows while he waits for customers. And I'm sure he'll get many positioned at that busy intersection with lots of potential customers passing by it. So now let's head round to the other side, which I think provides an even more interesting view with a whole lot more going on, and even at this stage it's starting to look like a proper medieval city. So over on the right here, this is the back of the Tailor and the glass blower. There's another look at that cobbler making some shoes. And you can see the street extending past with all the other buildings. That's always cool to see from a minifigure's perspective. And then on the opposite side here, we have that tall white building, which I've now furnished with an interior. And added a little green door to the top floor. And then the first floor is open. Then over on the opposite side, this is also nicely tightly packed in. And the first floor of this building includes the Sculptor, represented by the hammer on the sign outside. And then the top floor doesn't have any such sign like that, but that is home to the doctor's office. And we'll take a look at those very soon. I'd also like to point out some of the roof techniques which I've used. This is a combination of transparent red 1x1 tiles positioned at an angle. They're backed with this nice dark red colour. Originally I thought this might look a bit too unrealistic, but it actually looks quite nice in this type of lighting, and it doesn't look too bright or too much contrast like I was originally thinking it might. And then this roof over here also uses a really cool technique, although this is best seen from the other side, and that is basically achieved by tessellating a bunch of brown Nexonite shields to create this really unusual continuous roof tile pattern, which goes perfectly for this type of Middle Ages inspired architecture. I also like how I've managed to include some smaller peaks in the roof, like this one above this doorway here. This technique also allows for things like small outcrops here, and that's actually the access to the top floor. And you can see some more of that staircase, which winds all along the outside of this building, all the way down to the ground floor with that small entryway over there. And I'm really happy with how I've managed to utilise this large raised base plate. Don't forget, this is all still a work in progress, so I'll make this ocean look a lot nicer, probably tile it over with some more blue and transparent tiles. But even like this, I think it looks so cool, and it's definitely a lot of progress since last episode. One more area which I'd like to highlight is this small space between the Harbour Master's building and this red and black building. And this is this cosy little area which includes a small bridge covering the entrance to a sewer. And there's even a little window above that, and that continues up to the second floor, where you can also see that balcony overlooking the sea. And that just brings this whole section together, makes it look like it's not only part of that same layout, but also that it helps to reinforce this very densely populated feel, and that also looks really great next to the marine accessories attached to the Harbour Master's building. So of course this is in a perfect position to unload the cargo from any incoming ships that are docking at the port, and that's why there's this small area which is built out of the raised base plate that basically faces these large doors which open up to reveal all the cargo stored inside, which we'll get a better look at once we remove the roof of this structure. That's a really nice and very convenient way to access all of the cargo and just basically unload it straight away from any ships that might be docking in this harbour. And you never know, maybe in one of the future episodes we'll even see a giant medieval ship inside this bay. I think that would look really great there. We'll have to wait and see. But now we've seen enough of the exterior, let's take a look at the interiors of all three of these new additions to my castle kingdom. And let's start with the biggest, fanciest building on the shop floor of the glass blower. So we can start off over with this little entrance, which opens up into a small entrance hallway, complete with a broom on the wall. And then here we get to the main workshop of the glass blower, with the glass blower himself blowing a nice glass vase out of the fireplace there. And he's got a collection of some of his previous work up on the wall, as well as this massive stained glass window, clearly one of his most prized pieces of work. And then round the other side, I've decided to continue with the workshop theme by including some tools hanging on the walls, as well as some offcuts and broken shards of glass that were maybe left over from previous projects. And then the final detail in the centre of this room is this hidden trapdoor, which can be lifted up, and that includes a small bit of storage space for the glassblower to store some supplies and materials for its workshop. So that just about wraps up the glassblower, and now let's head out and up onto the second floor of this building, which is home to the tailor. So here you can see the tailor herself with her spinning wheel, where she sews all kinds of clothes and garments. There's a selection hanging up on these stands to give an idea to the customers the types of materials and fabrics that are available, as well as a selection of strings and silks on the shelf, with a very ornate looking mirror across the other side of the room, along with some more decorations and accessories hanging up on the wall. So we better leave the tailor to her work and take a look at the third and final floor of this building. And this is actually quite easy to access. We can simply remove the roof to reveal a very basic interior with a bed and a chest, and that's how you access it through this small doorway over on the other side of the roof, as we saw around the other side of the harbour. So altogether, I'm really happy with the amount of detail and the shops inside this building. I think they look really nice together. And before we move on to the two new buildings, I've also furnished this building, which I showed off in the last episode, and a lot of you posted some really great suggestions, but in the end I decided to use a combination of a few people's ideas, and basically include something like a scribe, or in this case a cartographer. So there you can see the cartographer himself working on restoring a very large ancient map, with lots more drawings and diagrams pinned up on the walls, as well as even more maps piled up on that small writing table. And that's just a really neat little area, and that allowed me to use these two large map tile pieces, which just wouldn't really fit in any other coloured building. As for the space above the cartographer, I've converted this into a simple living apartment, which just features this cosy looking pink bed with a small house sigil on the top and a shelf with some herbs and supplies. And this can be accessed through that door which we saw on the other side. And from here you can also see that nice little bookcase, which I've used to disguise part of the structure of the wall. And this brings us nicely onto the first floor of the red building, which is home to the Sculptor's workshop. So again, continuing with that craftsman theme, we have the sculptor himself working on a very intricate bust of an entire minifigure. And then, much like the glassblower, the opposite side of the sculptor's workshop features even more examples of his intricate designs, with all kinds of creatures and objects skillfully carved into small decorative statues. And then over on this more standard medieval house section, this is home to a medieval doctor, complete with his table full of very questionable looking medicines and surgical equipment, including, by the looks of it, some alcohol, a bag full of bones and spiders, and a saw hanging up on the wall. Let's just hope that no minifigures have to have that used on their legs. But if they do, then there's this handy little area which can be covered by a curtain made out of a minifigure cape, with a little hospital bed, or whatever the equivalent would be in the Middle Ages. I've also squeezed in another shelf, stacked full of even more unusual potions and medicines, as well as a few types of limbs and assorted body parts that medieval doctors tend to accumulate in their line of work. Finally, let's move on to the last new building, which is a lot more pleasant as to what's inside. And as you saw earlier, with the doors open, this is a small storage area for various types of cargo. So a basic warehouse with some giant barrels and also some crates hidden up by the nets, and that area includes several entrances for both delivering the cargo through this docking loading area, and there's also some more walkways with a staircase going down to provide access from the other side. And to get up to the second floor of this building, there's a small internal ladder, and that leads to the Harbour Master's office. There he is, currently admiring a diamond. Maybe that was brought in as cargo from one of the ships that visited the harbour. And he's got a big window that overlooks the harbour. Well, 2 windows in fact, so he's got a very good view of all the ships coming and going into the port. And then he's also got a cargo manifest hanging up on the walls to keep track of all the items entering and leaving this part of the kingdom. I thought it'd also make sense for this guy to manage all of the harbour equipment, things like harpoons and oars, and even a captain's hat on a stand there, as well as some other bundled up supplies and materials. So that way all of the harbour and port related items are all located in this central building. I think that works out really nicely. So that just about wraps up this episode of my LEGO Castle Kingdom Work in Progress series, and I can't wait to build even more and be back next time with even more exciting additions, probably to this city area next. So please give this video a like and let me know what you think in the comments. I always love hearing your suggestions and ideas for what I should include in this layout. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel to stay up to date on all of my latest videos and creations. I'd like to give a big thank you to all of my supporters on Patreon for helping to make my videos possible. And if you'd like to support me and get access to lots of exciting benefits and behind the scenes content, then you too can join me on Patreon, and the links to that will be in the description below. I'll see you guys next time with more LEGO creations, and thanks for watching.